So, guys, I want to review WWE Deadline. And, before I went to Deadline today, I was taking some beautiful pictures of the Bridgeport sunset. And I also was going to this really great pizza place. And they also had a really good, root beer float. I totally recommend it if you guys are ever in Bridgeport. And I also wanted to show off Bridgeport a little bit because a lot of people say negative things about this place being, ugly and ghetto. So, if I can show a little bit of beauty, why not? And before I start, with this, I also want to say that, this was a really, really great show. Unfortunately, there was definitely some really significant issues with the show. I gave it a C+. The show opened with HBK and CM Punk, and I really appreciated that because, honestly, it really just hyped the crowd, and it really was, it really just added to, the show. And also too, CM Punk was just there for 5 minutes talking, and I like that because there are some wrestlers that are fuck it, I won't give the audience 5 minutes. So I appreciate him for doing that. And I also like the minimalism that he's doing. If he wrestles at the Royal Rumble, then he wrestles at WrestleMania, that's good because MJF says that there is wrestling and there is being a wrestler, but there's also just pick and choosing when you have your matches. You don't do the thing where you always have matches every single time, really. So I like the minimalism, but I like how he just kind of came off as a hometown hero or welcome back home to WWE, so that was cool. To get to the matches, it first started with Axiom versus Nathan Frazier. There's really nothing really special to this match. I really appreciate Axiom with all his flips and all those really cool moves. And I also will say that was something I really saw tonight that I liked, was that there was not a lot of flippy wrestlers like you see in AEW, and then there was also two table spots, and I really appreciate that because I know one thing I don't like about AEW is that they seems like every championship match that they have, especially the AEW title, there's always somebody going through a table, and that's bad because it becomes kind of a trope, and that's that really, so, and Axiom did a great job. He has great music. And then that was the preliminary match. It started with Dominic Mysterio versus Dragon Lee, and it was a little weird because Rhea Ripley was not there. It says with Rhea Ripley, and that's not good. That's kind of false advertisement. But I also saw after the show, they don't show you the promos that they have. But Dominic was kind of flipping out because the Judgment Day wasn't there to help him. So, I definitely want to see the Judgment Day continue. I don't want to see anything kind of break up. I want to see actually Damian Priest become the cashing his money in the bank, really. So I do think that, I think I'm a little concerned they may break them up a little too soon. But Dominic Mysterio versus Dragon Lee. Dragon Lee's known for being flippy luchador, and Dominic Mysterio, he's kind of maybe more, he's kind of like an AEW wrestler. He does a little bit of everything, but he definitely is a little bit more flippy, but not to the point of the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega. It's not he kind of picks and chooses his moments, which I think makes him a better performer in that sense. Because again, if you're kind of always going for pizzazz, it gets boring. So it was an okay match. I was actually surprised Dragon Lee won, but I'm happy that he did because I wasn't expecting him to win. But again, one thing you see in WWE is that sometimes they'll do surprise title changes, and sometimes that can be good, then sometimes that can be bad. But the problem is that if you do something like in AEW, where it's okay, well, you have two wrestlers that Christian and Edge, that what I would have done this week is I would have had a beat down, or I would have actually had Christian beat Edge, because if you're gonna go there, or don't even have the match, just have the beat down. Don't have Nick Wayne's mom interfere, because that looks very like Vince Russo. But the reason why they do that a lot in AEW is because they don't want their wrestlers to lose. Because they're okay, well, Edge is doing so well, Christian's doing so well, we got to come up with a screwy finish. Let's have Nick Wayne's mom interfere. So sometimes when you say, okay, well, Dominic, you're doing great, but you're going to lose this one, that's better booking. Dominic and Dragon Lee both of them shouldn't have lost, but they made the tough choice to make a loser in this match, really, without any screwiness. And that's actually good, because it comes off better than just what they did in AEW, really. So I kind of appreciate it. And then, they're going to see a lot of me. I'm going to talk about AEW a bit and say, like, what they can improve from this show, because there's definitely things they can improve upon. And I think that's just me being constructive criticism. The next match was the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. And I will say that this also was this was like the second worst match on the card. I think that one thing that really hurt the match was like the two women that started, they were doing a bunch of near pinfalls, and it was kind of bad because I think it was like they got like a bunch of 2 counts, and it had to be like at least over 10 times, between 10 and 15 times, and I think the audience was saying boring. It got like a little frustrating, and it deflated the audience, and it got frustrating to a point where I think that everybody started with a lot of fire and a lot of big pop, and then it kind of killed it. So it got to a point where I actually walked out and I got like a soda and I took a piss, then I came back, and then, Lash Legend was being a motherfucking legend. And also too, like, she pinned like 2 people at one time. That's a really great look, because when you think of women's wrestling, that's not something that happens a lot, is that a woman actually pins 2 people. So I like how they're kind of reinventing the powerhouse woman, and she kind of was like lifting and throwing people, and it was really, really cool. There was like a spot where people were blocking the exit of the penalty box, so people climbed out, then they did like a table spot and all that, really. But I would say Lash Legend really saved this match, and I think that her not winning is a little good, because sometimes you do that American Dream, Dusty Rhodes type of finish when, the person who should have won, baby, doesn't actually win, baby. They actually get screwed over, baby, and you feel for them, baby. So her having that American Dream, that's the road, baby, type of finish, getting screwed out. So when she actually wins, baby, we actually feel for her, baby. Like, I think that's good. But the woman who won, I think it's Tiffany Stratton. Like, she has like the black and blonde hair, like, very beautiful hairstyle. Professionally speaking, I'm happy that she won, but I didn't know who these people are. But I just saw like a clip of Lash Legend lifting up Otis. I didn't know who that was in the beginning. I'm like, oh, now I connected the dots. I'm like, Lash Legend versus Jade Cargill, Amazonas versus Amazonas. That's going to be a really badass match, And then also too, like that the whole entire badass, confident wrestler that can lift and kick ass and take names and really back them being confident. Like, you don't see that a lot with women wrestlers, but that's actually what a lot of people want to see. And actually, if you really think about like women and Foxy Brown and a lot of like the strong female figures, it's really somebody who's confident and backs their shit up. And you get that with Lash Legend. She was definitely the MVP of that match. The next match was Carmelo Hayes versus Lexis King. There's nothing special about that. For the love of fucking God, change his name to Brian Pillman Jr., because I think that would stand out. That make him stand out a lot more. Don't hide the fact that he's Brian Pillman's son, but there's nothing that was attractive in this match. And then the next match I want to talk about is the men's Iron Man Survivor Challenge. What I have to say is that it started off very, very slow, and it started off very, very slow, and what happened was then after a little bit of time, it started to get really, really good, and I believe it was like Tyler Bate or Trick Williams who won who won the match. I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to get this video done really, really quickly, but one of them won, and the person who won, it was very, very fucking over with the audience. And what was kind of cool was like Braun Breaker, he got like 3, I think he got like 3 pins in a row. So you honestly thought it was going to be Braun Breaker, and I actually wanted him to win because, I just know him because of the Steiner brothers. So I was upset that he didn't win, but I'm happy they gave it to the new person. Like, I looked this guy up who won the match, and he actually has been an NXT North American champion. So I kind of like how it's not just, same old shit. You got to have some surprises. That's also very, very important. You can't kind of, as I said, like, you don't want to do the TNA wrestling thing where, they had like a fatal 4-way match, and then they had Hernandez come down and then waste his Feast or Fire briefcase. Or I think one time it was Petey Williams will have the Feast or Fire briefcase. They had Scott Steiner take it away from him. sometimes it works, like when they had like Otis win it, and then they gave it to the Miz, because obviously you can't have a comedy wrestler be the WWE champion. So sometimes it's good when you have people win contenderships and they've not been champion before. Don't always do the same old people. So if Braun Breaker didn't win, that upsets me. But the person that won actually really deserved it. And what I would kind of also say is that he was very over the audience. Like, I think the loudest pop of the night, the person that won this match, but it was. But I think it was Trick Williams. But what I would have to kind of say is that he had the loudest pop of the night if you exclude CM Punk, and that does say something. So the match after that, and this was the worst match on the card, which was Roxanne Perez versus Kiana James. Like, first of all, it should have been more like a PG version of the Impact Wrestling women's match, or a PG version of Dr. Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa hardcore match. There was a lot more they could have done. And I also kind of felt too, like, I think one thing that kind of upsetted people was like the woman who actually like interfered in the match. Like, people were like, who the hell is this woman? And that actually really hurt the show. And that just felt very anticlimactic. And I also kind of felt it was a little just too rushed, and it was like a little too rushed, and I think they could have done a lot more hardcore spots, and they actually climbed to the top of the cage, but it honestly felt like if somebody fell off the cage, or if somebody opened the cage, steel cage door, and they said something like don't count me as the winner, even if it's escape the cage, they said don't count me as the winner, I want to win by pinfall. They bring in like tables and they do other things to kind of do that. That's good. And then also too, there's been they showed like clips of them wrestling in like the parking lot, and they also showed clips of them like wrestling and doing suplexes on chairs. They kind of imitated those spots. That would have been good if they did a parking lot brawl and they were like separated, or they did something like, okay, it's starting in the parking lot, and where the concessions are, so actually people outside see it, then they do it, and then they get into the cage and they kind of do. There's a lot more they could have done. It felt like it was just there to be the penultimate, to be anticlimactic for the main event. That I really appreciated them having a women's match as the penultimate, and I actually think that's what they need to do in AEW. Like, the final match needs to be the penultimate. I mean, like, the women's match should always be the penultimate. So that just means the match before the main event. And what you do is you take the women. It's almost like the women's main event. Like, so what you do is you do something like you say, okay, well, she's going to win. I mean, you're going to have the women's match, and then you're going to have the men's match. And if, like, the women are more over, you switch their places. For example, like in TNA Wrestling, like, easily Awesome Kong and Gail Kim deserve to headline some pay-per-views. Like, what's the most over should, like, headline the pay-per-view. And I think that would be good for AEW. The other thing that's good about this show is that this was a 3-hour show. This wasn't like an AEW, 4-hour, 5-hour show. And then the other thing that I'll say on top of that I like, that's better than AEW, is that they had just 8 matches, but 7 matches on the card. So I like that, because with AEW sometimes they do like 11 to 15 matches, and that's too much. Like, I remember like All Out, I really hated that show because I know like they were trying to recover from CM Punk being fired and just show what they could. But I remember like the preliminary, I think there was like 4 or 5 matches. So sometimes less is more, especially with a company like AEW. I do think that AEW should just have more pay-per-views with less matches, more pay-per-view. Like, they should have like, I think their big 4 pay-per-views should always be like maybe 10 to 12 matches tops. But the regular pay-per-view should be like at least like 8 matches. That's a good length if you're going to do more pay-per-views. But I would also kind of say that the other thing too is don't have too many preliminary matches. Like, I think that's one good thing you learn from the show, is that if you have way too many preliminary matches, it actually is not good, because it just fatigues the audience. It's like saying, okay, well, I actually sat through not 7 matches, but like 10 or 11 matches. The other thing that I liked is that they did a really great job with the Iron Survivor Challenge. Like, they explained the rules a couple of times. Like, they had like the announcers explain it when the match started. They actually said, because there's so many rules, we're going to show the text on the screen. And then they also did something where when they started the show, they kind of like had like people talk. They had like the announcers talk about it verbatim. So multiple times you kind of knew that. Like, one thing I don't like about AEW is when you have the pure championship defended. That match has a bunch of different rules that you follow, and they don't explain that. That's not appropriate. If you have a match stipulation that is kind of complicated or has different like ways to win or lose, you have to explain that to your audience. You know, if it's something like the Royal Rumble where people know what it is, no problem. But if it's something like, you know, the Iron Survivor Challenge or the pure ROH Championship, you should always explain that to your audience or have like text and graphics. The other thing that I want to say with the show is that I do think that one thing AEW can definitely learn is that WWE is more character focused. Like, their promos and the way they do the editing of their promos is very, very, very good. And I also think that that's going to really help out AEW if they steal that. When you look at World's End, you know, you have Samoa Joe dominating people and squashing people. Then you have MJF and his more than a year-long run and all the people that he beat. And then you kind of have some clips of the Devil and the beatdowns and the beatdown of MJF. That would work because you're building suspense, and then you're also kind of building these characters up, you know, and that's kind of what WWE does. It's character driven. And like I've said, you know, you look at a show like Naruto. Why was Naruto versus Pain one of the best fights in anime? It was because they built up Naruto and other characters that meant a lot to Naruto and Pain, and then what an obstacle he was to overcome and all that stuff like that. So, you know, you don't just have matches after matches after matches after matches. You just have context, you know. So that's all very important. The next thing that I would say is that the last match was Ilya Dragunov versus Baron Corbin. And there's a couple things I want to say. That honestly, one other great thing about NXT is that they kind of showed clips in the promos of like why these people are fighting. Why is Dragunov and Corbin fighting? Why is Roxanne Perez and Kiana James fighting? Why are the what does it mean for the men's Ironman Survivor Challenge? What does it mean for the women's Ironman Survivor Challenge? We already know a lot about Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley and all the and Rey Mysterio, so they didn't really need to kind of like talk about that or just have montages of that on the show, actually. So I think that like what they did, the matches that they kind of like gave you context of what these people are, why they're fighting, it really helped out, and especially for those 4 matches because they're very significant. But I would say I would say like Dragunov versus Baron Corbin. It's good to see like Baron Corbin have a lot more offense and do a lot more because he was very underrated, and he was also kind of seen as a joke wrestler, you know. So I definitely was happy that he kind of got featured. And then the other thing that I like about Baron Corbin is that he definitely has a lot of potential, but he kind of is like one of those people that he's kind of like Bobby Lashley. He's one of those people that have a lot of potential, but gets puts in like roles where he's kind of like a joke character, or he's kind of like an afterthought, you know, or, you know, like that's one of the reasons why Jon Moxley left, because he had a lot of potential, but they kind of put him in just, you know, dumbass roles, you know. So I was happy to see Baron Corbin at least get a chance. I'm happy that they had Baron Corbin and Dominic Mysterio, Rey Mysterio on the card. So a few wrestlers that you kind of know who the hell they are, really, not just an NXT show where it's like, I don't know who all these wrestlers are, you know. And it's also good to have a mix of legends. And that's another thing I want to talk about that I'm going to say before I forget is that I like how they introduced Booker T, Rey Mysterio, HBK, CM Punk. You know, if you want to do something special for AEW, you can easily do something like maybe where if you see like 2 big wrestlers have a match, you can have like Mark Henry go down. You can have somebody like Paul White, or you can have somebody like Jim Ross, or you can have somebody like Dustin Rhodes or other like legends on your, or even like Sting or whatever. Like that's kind of like the other thing that I like about AEW or Ric Flair is that they can make them commentators, they can kind of make them announcers, they can kind of make them kind of like, you know, just watch the match and whatever. They kind of utilize their legends a lot better. They don't do something like an AEW where, Sting's going to wrestle like once on a pay-per-view, like get him off his ass. Or like Mark Henry, what the hell has Mark Henry done? He's kind of been on his ass a lot in AEW. They should actually have him be a commentator, especially when he sees the big men match, because then he can kind of promote, like maybe he wants to go one more time. Or even with Paul White, what would happen if Paul White was always, what would happen if he had Powerhouse Hobbs have like matches, or Wardlow have matches, and then you have like Big Show always comment and then kind of give them looks like, okay, we're gonna fight eventually. That would be what you do. That's how you utilize legends. Or Bryan Danielson's talking about retiring. So what would happen if you kind of say like during like grappling matches or whatever, he or like like wrestlers like Will Ospreay and other ones are having matches. What would happen if Bryan Danielson retires and then like he's always commenting on those matches and he's always being introduced? That's a good way to use your legends. It will hype the crowd, and that's a good like start to a show. So they know how to use their legends to kind of hype the product. That's why CM Punk was there, was just to give an extra hype and to give it extra like boost in ticket sales. So they use their legends better. But I felt this match ended very anticlimactic to me. Like I think like what they could have done with Baron Corbin is that they could have had him cheat a lot. They could have like done something like with what you saw with Robert Roode in TNA Wrestling, where he's always trying to cheat. He's always trying to use weapons and other things like that. Like this is a good example of if they could have just ripped off AEW and had a bunch of just Corbin cheating, Dragunov always trying to like counter the cheating and all that, really. But it just ended very anticlimactically and I'm not sure, like it kind of looked like Dragunov like hit him and it looked like a clothesline or just like hitting him with like his arm or shoulder, if I remember it correctly. But it didn't like kind of have like a wow factor to me. It just ended abruptly. So some of these matches, I think that they kind of end really abruptly. One other thing that I will say about the show is that I like how a lot of these matches ended. There wasn't only the Roxanne Perez and Kiana James had a screwy finish, but all the other matches didn't have like a Vince Russo finish, or just like, okay, we don't know who's going to win, so we're going to like just make it 50-50 and kind of have a screwy finish type of thing, So I kind of like how they didn't do screwy finishes to protect people and Vince Russo finishes. That's good. So overall, it's a really good show. I gave it a C+. Like I would say that definitely the men's match was really strong. I like how I really like how Trick Williams, if I have the name right, won, and I just really like how I really like the winner of the men's survivors match. And if I'm getting his name wrong, I deeply apologize for that. I also really liked just the production value. I like just how they kind of like made these all these wrestlers characters, and most of the time they gave you the motivations of why they're feuding. And also it didn't feel like a AEW show where it relied too much on flippy spots and pizzazz. And then also, when you look at this, obviously people know this is the Iron Survivors match, but you had 1, 2, 3, 4 matches. You had 4 matches on this card. No, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches. You had 5 matches on this card that I'm reading off my list, maybe 5 or 6 matches. I'm a little dyslexic. On this card that was not like a tag team, because one other issue you see in AEW is like they do way too many like multi-tag teams, like a four-way tag team, so it's like 8 people, or like you may do like something like a trios match, or you may do something like, okay, well, a gauntlet or a battle royale, because you're trying to feature everybody. But the problem is that you really don't have a wrestler that stands out except for their moves, and that's not good, because you need to kind of be more character driven. So I'm kind of happy that as I said, WWE cares more about characters, and that's important to wrestling. That's what's needed in wrestling. But there are ways around it. Like, honestly, like the cold opens you saw on Collision a few weeks ago, they did cold opens for like, tag teams and whatever in AEW, especially before their matches. Or 4-way tag team matches. That would actually be a better solution. But I also like this card, because one thing AEW can learn from this card is don't have so many like 4-way tag team matches, or have so many trios matches, or have so many like gauntlets or battle royales, because eventually it's like, who the hell am I going to put my attention on, type of thing. Like, one good thing about the Continental Classic is it's two people having a match, and they're also talking about how they feel afterwards, and they're setting up feuds. And that's important. You have characters, but you have something simple to follow. You don't have like all these multi matches. So I give NXT credit for doing that. Not over relying on multi people matches. And if they have people who bitch about not being on the card, I know like HBK will be like, I got 2 words for you, just to tell them that it's not necessary. It's not necessary, and it's about quality. It's not about featuring everybody that you can and turning into a big clusterfuck, because that's the issue with AEW. But overall, really good production. As I said, the Men's Survivors Challenge, great match. I also really enjoyed the Women's Survivor Challenge, because it was definitely saved by Lash Legend whipping some ass. I'm happy to see Baron Corbin in a better spot. Dominic Mysterio, I'm happy to see him. And I'm also happy to see Dragon Lee, like, great offensive. And I'm also, like, happy that they had Rey Mysterio, because, again, it's important to feature your legends, and he's not going to be around that much longer, because he could retire and just, not be in WWE, so it's important to feature him. Like I said, I think that, if you want, like, Brian Pillman Jr. stand out, change his name to Brian Pillman Jr. Don't do Lexus King. He didn't really do anything in that match. He could have just easily been more vocal or talk in the microphone. They need to kind of make him almost like a PG version of Brian Pillman. He needs to kind of have more gusto. And he needs to work on his microphone skills, but he doesn't really stand out that much. Roxanne Perez, Kiana James, very anticlimactic. That was the worst match on the card, but overall, really good show. Like, as I said, it's a C+. I definitely will say that, I've been to, like, AEW All Out, and to me, that was kind of like a D+. And I've also been to Wrestle Dream, and I would just, like, say, like, with Wrestle Dream, like, because of Edge, and how transcendent a moment that was, I would say that was, like, an A-. And I would also will say that I've been to the Full Gear show, and the Full Gear show had a number of issues, but I would say, like, because of Swerve and Adam Page, that was kind of like a B+ show, I would kind of say. So I definitely kind of want to say that, and then this show's kind of like a C+. So I just want to give you examples of how I rate the AEW shows, my opinions of that, because I definitely want you guys to know this is my first time going to an NXT show. I usually like the AEW shows. I'm actually planning to go to, like, Vengeance Day in Clarksville, Tennessee, but I do think it's important for me to kind of share that, yes, I do go to AEW a lot, but I honestly favor good wrestling, but I also think it's important to compare it to all the other shows that I've seen, because I think that's important, just so we're all on the same page that I'm not being biased towards a specific brand. Again, I participate in competitions like the 48-Hour Film Project. I know what it's like to kind of just see unprecedented bias towards something, and I'm not going to do that with professional wrestling. I'm a fan of good shows, and definitely they had a great show. And then I also want to announce, in addition to going to Vengeance Day, they have SmackDown and Mohegan Sun, so I get to gamble. Maybe I'll be limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing from Mohegan Sun, but I can't wait to go to SmackDown and in March as well. So a lot of good wrestling coming my way. I'm also planning to go to World's End in 2 weeks, and then I'm also planning to go to Rampage I'm planning to go to Revolution in March 2024, and I'm also going to the Newark, New Jersey show. So a lot of great things coming my way with wrestling, and I'm happy to give WWE a chance, and I had a good time at my first WWE show.